The Golden State Warriors have lost 7 out of their last 9 games. And Stephen Curry, after the last loss to the Houston Rockets, has sounded off on the recent struggles happening with this Golden State Warriors team. We're going to talk about that on the first half of today's show. And on the back half, remember when I put that community post out last week about any questions you guys had about Golden State at this point in time? We're going to answer those questions and hot takes on the back half of today's show. But first, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are on the road to 71,000 subscribers here at Warriors Today. We had an awesome watch party last night. Picked up almost over 250 subscribers. So if you want to be part of those and every video we put out here on the channel, daily news and rumors surrounding your Golden State Warriors, make sure you are subscribed. Click that red sub button down below, and we'll get started with today's show. What's going on, Dub Nation? You're watching Warriors Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith, and on today's show, Stephen Curry. He's getting honest about the recent struggles happening in Golden State. They've lost 7 of their last 9. They had a putrid first half, picked it up in the second half, but it just wasn't enough last night, and they did not move on to the NBA Cup Quarterfinals. So after the game, Steph had a lot of things to say, starting with this. He said, "It's a team trying to figure out who you are, what works, what sets we need to be in. Team stealing out on our standard pick and roll, which I usually can make plays. If I can make that last shot, you might not ask me about the last 2 possessions. That's kind of the way the game goes. When you lose, everything is on full display." And in the second half part of that quote, Steph is completely right. The NBA is a make-or-miss league. He unfortunately missed the last shot, a shot I'm completely comfortable with him taking in isolation to ice this game. They're up 1. He was trying to put them up 4 and just put the game away. I totally understand that. But I want to go back to the first part of that quote as well, where Steph's talking about how this is a team still figuring things out. We're 24 games into the season, man, and I'm not saying that Golden State has to be the most fine-tuned roster and rotation and performance-based team that they're going to be in May and hopefully, later on in the postseason run. But man, we got to start, getting some continuity here. We got to start figuring out who we are quicker rather than, more further down the line, because this is what happens. Golden State just puts in random rotations. Think about the lineup that Steve Kerr had out there with Pat Spencer and Brandon Pajemski and Lindy Waters last night, and they went on a total drought. They were turning the ball over. They were sloppy. It was a bad display of basketball for a large portion of that game last night. And the officials were no helps, but you can't blame that, and you can't blame the last possession. Golden State already had put themselves in a rough spot with the inconsistent rotations that has been a problem all season long. So that's got to get fixed really, really soon, or the Warriors are going to lose 7 of the next 9 games. And it's just going to be downhill more and more since this team started out 12-3. And it's unfortunate, right? Because the second half of that game, second half of that fourth quarter, they just really couldn't buy a bucket. Went up 6 with 1:20 left, and then they were scoreless the rest of the way. Here's what Steph had to say about that pattern. He said, "The pattern of scoring scoreless droughts down the stretch has to be addressed, or else we'll be a mediocre team. I'll take responsibility for not being able to get us organized and not being able to finish plays. Ball's in my hands. I got to make shots." And like I said before, you have to live with the miss that Stephen Curry had to ice the game. But I appreciate what he's doing here, right? He's putting all the blame on himself, but it's not warranted. Yeah, it wasn't his best shooting night last night, but it wasn't the best shooting night for a lot of Golden State Warriors. Like I said, 4 of 22 in the first half from deep. You were good the rest of the way, but you can't put yourself in those type of holes. And for a Warriors team that has had this problem in the past, right? Think about that Nuggets game where they didn't score for the final 6 minutes of that entire contest. It was absurd, and you can't have it. You have to have more reliability and clutch time. And, Golden State was missing a guy like Andrew Wiggins last night, somebody you could lean on in those moments, but you have to have some sort of reinforcements and some players who you could feel confident in taking over down the stretch. Who's not Steph Curry, right? I mean, he's not going to be perfect every single night. You have to find more resources out there, and Golden State just hasn't been able to find that yet. Brandon Pajemski, Jonathan Kuminga, yeah, they each hit 2 big shots last night to extend Golden State to 90 points, but for the 40 minutes before that, maybe not so much Kuminga, more so Pajemski. For the 40 minutes before that, he was a non-factor, and for Golden State to be pushing all their chips into the center of the table on a guy like that, you got to rely on him to get the ball in the bucket. He just doesn't a lot of the time. Here's more of what Steph had to say from last night. He said, "But I think we can all address certain sets that can get us into better shot creation type opportunities. Knowing how teams are going to guard us, especially in the last 5 minutes, we're talking about it. Experimenting. That's going to be a defining point of our full season." I mean, with the struggles that Golden State had down there, down the stretch last night, I mean, that kind of feels like Steph is calling Steve Kerr out a little bit. He said, "We can find better sets to get us into better shot creation type opportunities. That sounds like he's calling out Steve Kerr a little bit for the offense that he's running out there with Golden State, and maybe not knowing his personnel as well as he should. Golden State had too many issues with the shot clock yesterday. How many times did the shot clock expire and they didn't get a shot up, or they got a super bad shot up? Yeah, Rockets defense is really good. They were stifling for a lot of possessions, but this Golden State team is supposed to be one of the better offensive groups in the NBA. It's unfortunate that the game resulted in the way that it did last night, and it seems like it's becoming a pattern now and a bad habit for a team that was 12-3. They were at the top of the Western Conference. Now they've lost 7 out of the last 9, and they seem to be getting closer and closer to disaster rather than the solution that they were looking for over the offseason. Last quote up from Steph Curry here. He said, "If we figure it out or we don't, we're playing well enough to win in most games, so that's a good sign and a bad sign," right? Yeah, Golden State's good enough to stick in these games. And what is the overarching theme here, right? The roster isn't good enough. Golden State has to make a move. There's no getting around it at this point. You see it plain in the subtext from Stephen Curry right here. He said, "We're playing well enough to win these games, but we're not." Why is that? Probably because you don't have reliant enough scoring or reliable enough scoring outside of number 30. And a lot of the times, number 22, Andrew Wiggins. He's been awesome shooting 40% from 3. But even then, I still think you need another weapon on this team that can go put the ball in the cup in crunch time. So, with that being said, are we chilling or are we worried? What is the vibe of Dub Nation right now as they lost 7 out of the last 9? What's your panic meter at with the Golden State Warriors? Scale it for me in the comments section right now. 1 to 100. Let me know what you guys think down below. Next up, we are going to answer you guys' questions. I know you guys are very frustrated with the state of the Golden State Warriors right now. I'm sure your panic meters are super high. We're going to dive into your questions on the back half of today's show. But first, I got to give a major shout out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform with over 10 million active members, including yours truly. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks, and you better join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Who doesn't love rewards like the one you see on screen? Patrick Mahomes, more than half a passing yard this Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. I'm taking that. Who doesn't love a free square in your Prize Picks? And then for the basketball games tonight, we got Jakob Poeltl, more than 14.5 points, and Derek White, who's been filling up the stat sheet lately, more than 11 rebounds plus assists. You can take my picks, you can fade my picks, but you can have a free $50 in your account to tail my picks as well when you play at your first $5 entry and use our promo code CLNS. So again, download the Prize Picks app. Use our promo code CLNS. When you place that first $5 entry, when you pick a lineup of 2 to 6 player stat projections, and just click more or less, you get a free $50 in your account. You don't even need to win to receive the $50. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. So from the comments that I saw in the community post that I put out last week, air out your grievances. You got any questions about Golden State? What do they need to do next? I'm here to answer them. Well, it's time now. It seems like you guys are pretty frustrated, so let's get right into it. BJ Matthews with the first question on tab. He said, #Warriors today. I thought this question was too good, so I decided to maybe move the goalpost a little bit on using #Warriors in the post. He said, do you think the Warriors are suffering from the loss of DeAnthony Melton right now? Because after he went out, we haven't been as consistent defensively or consistent offensively. This is a phenomenal question, man. DeAnthony Melton was my favorite free agency pickup heading into this season because of the way he could be a point of attack defender, because of the way he can handle the ball. He's a solid enough facilitator and trustworthy enough to give the ball in his hands and let him run the offense, let Steph work off the ball a little bit, and Golden State will be fine. Steve Kerr trusted him immensely off the rip, right? He was championing him as the starting shooting guard pretty much 8 games into the season, right? And then next thing you know, 2 games later, he goes out, and he has to have ACL surgery. And Golden State just hasn't been the same team since. Brandon Podziemski, he wasn't getting as many minutes as we all thought he would at the start of the season because DeAnthony Melton was so damn good. Now Brandon Podziemski's got to play more minutes, and the results are not there. The results are not similar with DeAnthony Melton. Melton is a league average to above average three-point shooter. He's one of the best on-ball defenders in this league. Steph Curry was praising how he guarded him up in the Memphis series a couple of seasons ago. I think it was an immense loss for Golden State, and now you have $12.8 million on the books that isn't being used. Hopefully, they can find a trade partner to use that salary, and I would even be open to bringing DeAnthony Melton back next year because I think he fits phenomenally next to Stephen Curry. I think it's a massive loss, and Golden State simply hasn't been able to recover. Think about the record that they had with DeAnthony Melton before, and think about the record they've had since. they're basically polar opposites. I bet you flip the wins and the losses, and you probably get the same numbers there. So DeAnthony Melton, a massive loss, and Golden State has to find a way to replace him soon. Cade Jackson up next as well. My guy, Cade. He showed some love to our watch party last night. My guy, Cade Jackson, beast. He said, is there any path to landing Cam Johnson and Miles Turner? So probably not if we're using the word and, right? Or we could start talking a little bit, right? Miles Turner, I'm not so sure. I talked about it a little bit last night on the stream. I was saying, I've talked about Miles Turner on the program before. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit for Golden State. He fixes problems, right? He's secondary scorer, maybe not as much, but you pair him up with Andrew Wiggins, and he can become, those two combine in the aggregate to be that secondary scorer. Elite rim protector, solid enough rebounder, and he stretches the floor. He's a true 7-footer that Golden State's been lacking for a long period of time. Honestly, ever since they had Andrew Bogut really in the lineup, was the last real true 7-footer that was playing significant minutes for this Golden State team. So I would like a guy like Miles Turner, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he'll be available. Indiana Pacers is on a different timeline than a lot of the teams that are willing to sell right now. They're trying to win the Eastern Conference. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. There's really no reason for them to trade away Miles Turner just for a couple of expiring deals and draft capital. That's not the timeline they're on. They still think of Miles Turner as a key piece in their championship pursuits. But how about Cam Johnson, the guy that I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks as my number one Warriors trade target because of what he can do outside on the perimeter, because of his defensive versatility. He can guard guards as well as the forwards in this league. Super switchable. He fits seamlessly in this Warriors offense. He loves running off pin down screens. He loves getting open outside the arc and hitting them at a super high clip. He shoots 43% from three-point this season. You think that wouldn't be awesome for a team that shot 4 of 22 in the first half last night? I mean, you're missing Andrew Wiggins, but if Cam Johnson's in there, it's a totally different story. The game probably plays out an entirely different way because Cam Johnson probably hits 1 or 2 threes there in the first or second quarter. I love the way that he can impact this team. I think he'd be the perfect fit, and I don't think he would cost a heck of a lot either. Maybe you got to give him some draft capital, but at that point, you're trying to win a championship, and you're playing for the now, and you're playing for Steph Curry and Draymond Green's last couple of years of his career. In my opinion, you got to go get Cam Johnson if you're the Golden State Warriors. Next up, my guy Genji, need mercy. Said might be risky, but the Warriors could use Wiggins in a trade for a solid number 2 and possibly have Kuminga take up that number 3 value. I think Wiggins will give you more freedom and flexibility to get a better trade. And obviously, right, if we're just playing the numbers game here, Andrew Wiggins makes $25 million a year. If you were to go trade for a guy like Brandon Ingram or a Jimmy Butler, you have to include Andrew Wiggins. There's no doubt about it. Those guys make close to, if not more than, $40 million this season. You have to match salaries. Golden State is pressed up against that first tax apron. You have to find a way to make salaries work if you're going to deal for one of those guys. I don't think Golden State wants Brandon Ingram. They've reportedly not had interest in Brandon Ingram, but Jimmy Butler is a name that's circulating right now. You'd have to give up Andrew Wiggins in that deal. But in my opinion, I think Andrew Wiggins honestly might be a more valuable piece to the Golden State Warriors right now than a Jimmy Butler would. He hits threes at a 40% clip. Jimmy Butler doesn't even attempt threes. Jimmy Butler is going to be 36. Andrew Wiggins is on a deal for the next couple of seasons at $25 million, which looks like a really valuable contract, which honestly could be even traded down the line for another player in a couple of years. I don't know if a 36-year-old Jimmy Butler is going to solve all the problems for Golden State. I like his voice in the locker room. I like the way he can take over in the postseason, but I think I would rather keep Andrew Wiggins and try to deal some of the expiring contracts away for Golden State. Next up, Tahir the Virgo. What up? He said Kurt thinks Pods is him. Pods is not him. Moody, Waters, and the new PG, I'm guessing you're talking about Pat Spencer there, should take his minutes and will be better. I don't want to talk a ton about this, right? I've aired my grievances about Brandon Podziemski. I don't think he's a good basketball player. I just don't. For a guy whose specialty was facilitation and three-point efficiency back in college at Santa Clara, he hasn't translated any of that to the NBA. His rookie season was far better than the output that he's having through 24 games this year. He turns the ball over, doesn't play defense on the ball. Awesome effort guy. Crashes the glass, puts his body on the line, takes charges. Love that kind of stuff. And you need those kind of guys in your team. But those kind of guys aren't the ones that take the mantle from Steph Curry, according to the Warriors front office. Those kind of guys typically aren't all-stars unless you're filling up the stat sheet like a Draymond Green and you're one of the best on-ball defenders and one of the more versatile defenders in NBA history. Paz ain't it, man. I think that I was right about the fact that they should have dealt him for Lauri Markkanen or Paul George or honestly anybody. Deal him for Cam Johnson if that's what it takes, man. I don't think Brandon Podziemski is a very good basketball player and necessarily fits next to Stephen Curry and the crop of this Warriors team. So there's that on that. But Panthers Nation, interesting. A Panthers Warriors fan. Real Madrid fan as well, looks like it. So hashtag Warriors, where do you expect to finish in the Western Conference this season and go Dubs? Well, twofold, right? Two sides to every coin. If Golden State doesn't make a trade, I think they're looking at the play-in tournament again. They're at the 5th seed right now. They've been slipping. I think with the injury to D'Anthony Melton and the constant in and out and who's not playing tonight and who's not playing tomorrow for Golden State, just creating inconsistencies. And the rotation hasn't been consistent when everybody is healthy either. So I think they'd be headed for the play-in. Maybe would even miss it. I don't know. I would call it an 8th or 9th seed if Golden State were to go through the rest of the season with the roster as currently constructed. However, if they pick up a guy like a Cam Johnson or even a bigger fish than that if somebody becomes available, Golden State could easily be in the top 4 in the West and have a first-round playoff series with home court advantage. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think Golden State is a very, very good basketball team if they just take one more step. They got to add one more weapon. They lost one already, so they're going to have to make up for that in a trade at some point this season. Call up the Nets. See what they want. Go get a package of Dennis Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith, or go get Cam Johnson solo. Those are the 3 trade targets that are at the top of my list for Golden State. But Cam Johnson, in my opinion, raises your ceiling the most and can get Golden State to a top 4 seed. We can talk about more of this, though, on Twitter, at Smitty, at CS. Hit me up over there. I'm bringing the Warriors news there before we even bring you a video on YouTube. So hit me up on Twitter. And like I said, make sure you are subscribed. We are on the road to 71,000 subscribers right now. Daily news and rumors. Best Warriors content on YouTube every single day. We'll see you in the next one. Let's go Dubs.